are times when we step back and create some space to think about what's happening in our lives and how God's working in our lives. We may go for a walk or perch ourselves at a scenic view. We may sit in a darkened room or look at a painting that speaks to us. We meditate, ruminate, and contemplate. In other words, we brood. We read in the Bible that God brooded from time to time, and since we are made in the image of God, we too have that capacity. When God created the beginning, we are told that after the creation of the heavens and the earth, God brooded over them. We can only imagine the Holy One taking a step back and pondering, what next? And the what next is light. There are also several instances of Jesus brooding. He often withdrew from the crowds and even the disciples, or at least he tried to. He thought about what was to come. He turned over in his mind both the ministry that he was doing and his sacrificial death that would save the souls of his children. No one could relate to these kind of deep thoughts. He tried to talk to the disciples about his pending death on the cross, but it was absolutely beyond them. They only wanted to cling to what was in front of them at that very moment. And so Jesus remained alone in his brooding. Brooding has another meaning beyond contemplation. It also means protection. And Jesus did this kind of brooding as well. He wanted to protect people from their own evil, from the repercussions of turning their backs on their faith, from the sin that festers in life when we fail to love God and love others completely. In a sermon warning religious leaders about the fraudulent guidance, which in seminary we call the woe to sermons, and which made us tremble, Jesus concludes with a lament and a cry of his brooding. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you murder the prophets and you stone those who sent you. Oh, how often have I yearned to gather you together like a hen gathering her chicks under her wings. But you would have none of it. Jesus says, I am a brooding mother hen trying to protect you. A brooding hen lays over her eggs and then her newborn chicks, fluffing out her wings to 3 times their normal size, and she doesn't move. Only once a day does she get up and eat, do her business, and then she goes right back to her nest. She just fluffs herself up and sits down on her babies. If a fox comes into the hen house, there's not much that she can do but cover her chicks with her own body. She has no fangs, no stinky spray to ward off the fox and blind him. She can't pull herself. and her chicks into a shell for protection. She can only brood, covering her little ones with her body. The fox will have to go through her if he wants her chicks. And that's just what a fox does. The strong jaw and the sharp teeth send feathers flying and the chicks running. Jesus, the brooding hen, gives her life for her chicks. Having loved her own who were in the world, she will love them to the end. Jesus knew what was coming, and he wasn't going to run from the fox, and he wasn't going to become like the fox. Jesus would sacrifice his life to protect those he had been given. His body would bear the teeth marks of the predator. He would be left battered and bruised and dead. And the foxes of the world would seem to triumph. But the love of the brooding hen cannot so easily be stopped. As Jesus approached Jerusalem in his last days, he stopped and he looked down over his beloved city, in which he had been dedicated to God as a baby, which he visited every year for Passover with his parents and then with his disciples, which held so much beauty and so much potential. Jerusalem represented God's covenant with the Jews. And as Jesus drew near, he paused and he brooded and he wept. His tears were those of love, disappointment, concern, and grief for what was coming. Jesus knew that the temple had become a den of thieves. He knew that the majority of those he was sent to would reject the very stone that would eventually become the cornerstone. He knew that one of his closest friends would betray him for 30 pieces of silver. He knew that he would become helpless in the jaws of Herod and the high priest and the soldiers of Rome. They would assume that they could kill the love of God. But such a love cannot easily be stopped. And so Jesus wept openly as he began to pour himself out for the salvation of the world. Jesus' entry into Jerusalem is called his triumphal entry. At first, it may seem like a misplaced title. True palms would be waved and hosannas shouted. But we know what would happen 5 days later. That Jesus went into the city. The triumph of the triumphal entry lays in the fact that the prophecies would be fulfilled. The love of God would be fulfilled. Salvation would be filled once and for all. Hear these gospel words. Approaching Bethphage and Bethany, what is called the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of the disciples with these instructions. Go into the village ahead of you. Upon entering it, you'll find a tethered colt that no one has yet ridden. Untie it and lead it back. If anyone should ask you, why are you untying it? Say, the rabbi needs it. They departed on their errand and found things just as Jesus had said. And as they untied the colt, its owner said to them, why are you doing that? They explained that the rabbi needed it. Then the disciples led the animal to Jesus, and laying their cloaks on it, helped him mount. People spread their cloaks on the roadway as Jesus rode along. As they reached the descent from the Mount of Olives, the entire crowd of disciples joined them and began to rejoice and praise God loudly for the display of power they had seen, saying, blessed is the one who comes in the name of our God. Peace and heaven and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. Jesus replied, I tell you, if they were to keep silent, the very stones would cry out.